El título de la conferencia es La vuelta al mundo en 80 minutos, accediendo al arte y a la cultura del siglo XXI. Lo primero que quisiera es agradecerle que haya llegado, porque la verdad es que ha llegado ahora mismo del aeropuerto y se tiene que ir después de comer, o sea que ha hecho un enorme esfuerzo para estar aquí con ustedes y se lo queremos agradecer. También me ha dicho que resalte que es la primera vez que va a dar una conferencia fuera de Inglaterra en el poco tiempo que lleva como director de este museo. Él ha trabajado como conservador en distintos museos alemanes hasta el año 2001, que es nombrado director general de las colecciones artísticas estatales de Dresden, cargo que comprende la supervisión de numerosos museos y galerías. Culmina su carrera en los museos, asumiendo en septiembre del 2011 la dirección del Victoria and Albert Museum de Londres, y además es miembro y consejero de diversas instituciones, también autor de numerosos artículos, publicaciones y profesor de la Universidad de Dresde y de otras escuelas de diseño, etc. Su carrera está reconocido con honores como el Caballero de la Orden de las Artes y las Letras en Francia o la Orden Danesa de Dannebrog. También tiene otros trabajos, sobre todo de gestión cultural, que él mismo va a explicar. Muchas gracias.
Congratulations. I think this is a great topic, ladies and gentlemen. La Grand Tour, the Grand Tour, is an amazing topic. And I can't remember that there was a conference or something similar like it on it. And to translate the Grand Tour in a contemporary approach, to do something that is related to it, and to create a bridge between the history and today in terms of tourism and how we see the museums is definitely important. There's something not said in my biography, and those biographies, those CVs are always a bit difficult. But I had that experience, and a little bit later I will come back to it, to arrange one of our contemporary Grand Tours. I was in the management of the Expo in Hanover, the World's Fair in Germany in the year 2000, with all the difficulties, with all the problems, with all the public discussions that we had about what does it mean to arrange a trip around the world on one side on an expo. I mean, I remember you had the discussion in Sevilla and in other places. So this is another approach to that Grand Tour, but we talk about the history of that a little bit later. And another remark in the beginning, we all know Walter Benjamin, the philosopher, and his amazing article, important article, about the reproduction of the art piece with new technologies. In this case, it was prints. If you think about his approach and you translate that in the contemporary technology, then he was definitely right, and more than right. If you have the possibility to send an art piece in a different form around the globe immediately, digital-wise, this changed our whole perception, our whole opinion about art and history. Okay, let's start. Around the world in 18 minutes. I don't think I need 18 minutes, more like 60 minutes or maybe a little bit less, and then I hope you have some questions. Accessing culture in the 21st century. The Grand Tour was a unique opportunity for wealthy young men to undertake a journey of cultural education and broaden their understanding of the arts, history, and languages. They traveled through Europe to Italy, where a month or even years were spent visiting historical sites, museums, art galleries, collecting souvenirs and objects to take home. Some of those are, by the way, museums today. Refine their manners and expand their world view. I saw that our colleague Hermann Partzinger will give a lecture tomorrow, And I mean, part of his lecture will be the Humboldt brothers. This is definitely not part of the Grand Tour, but the idea how the Humboldt brothers started to expose the world, show the world, showcase the world in Berlin has definitely an origin, kind of roots in that idea of the Grand Tour. It was often uncomfortable, if not dangerous, extremely expensive, and on many occasions simply used as a pretense of debauchery. However, it was also instrumental in the formative years of some of the world's great artists, politicians, and creative minds, such as Goethe or Byron. Today, the Grand Tour has gone digital. Although it's not what we typically consider as tourism, online consumption and experience has indeed become an integral part of tourism today. The Grand Tour provided a real-world classroom of history, art, and languages. Today, the classroom is not tied to a specific location. We can visit the buildings, read about the people and the artworks, see the objects, and even interact with them in a more intimate way from almost anywhere in the world. Access is broader, deeper, faster, and more comfortable. It is more democratic, and in the sense that all you need is a computer, a laptop, an internet connection to embark upon a similar journey of enlightenment. The Grand Tour begins well before departure and can even be undertaken without leaving the comfort of one's home. It most often begins with a journey through the online images, information available on our intended destination. This also holds true for today's museums, art galleries, and other institutions that conserve and display the images and objects which constitute part of our cultural fabric and history. And talking about this topic in the Prado is quite difficult, also in front of my friend Miguel Sugasa, because the Prado was definitely a pioneer in that field. Digitization, the rendering of objects and artwork in a digital format, has become an integral part of the V&A's, the Victoria and Albert's strategic planning, as well as most of the other museums around the world, but especially in the UK and definitely in London. The global trend allows us to access artifacts, objects, and artworks from almost anywhere in the world. The V&A is quite famous for something that's called Future Plan. If you have time, I really recommend to Google it. Future Plan started about 10, 12 years ago, and it's an ongoing renovation process of the museum. I think it's very smart, that idea that they had at that time, 15 years ago, an ongoing renovation of this really complicated museum. Complicated in terms of architecture, but also as collections. So we started half a year ago now another phase of Future Plan, or we added another phase of Future Plan to the architectural one, and this is the digital one. So we really think this is one of the future parts of the museum. The V&A alone, at the V&A alone, we have over 1 million objects and approximately 207,000 images in a digital format. Depending on that format, digitization may even provide a more intimate and interactive experience than would be possible inside the museum itself, since we are often separated from the object or the artwork. 3D and other interactive formats allow the objects to be viewed from all the angles and can engage the viewer in a more comprehensive way. As websites become more sophisticated, in order to keep up with the increasing user demands and expectations, these more comprehensive renderings will become more common, more detailed, and more user-friendly. I had that great opportunity last Friday that someone gave me a lesson, a lecture in the future of TV, Apple TV and Google TV. I don't know if you have seen that already, maybe it's a bit boring for you what I'm saying. But for me was, and I always thought I'm quite on the forefront of this kind of development, it was like the view in a new world. We will have in the end millions of TV channels, but the notion is not the right one because it's not a channel, it's more like apps. It's more like if you go into the internet and if you have moving images. But this is an amazing, I mean, there's a risk, definitely, a political risk and a social risk. But at the same time, it's a completely new approach to showcase what we are doing in the cultural field, in the cultural world, and it gives a new dimension to our collections and our museum to broadcast it. The website remains at the heart of the V&A's public portfolio, which is now being tailored for mobile devices, tablets, and other devices. The V&A channel offers a library of short films about key exhibitions and also about the life of the V&A. These films are made to be in-house production teams and by third-party producers. We have also experimented with live streaming, and we are considering how best to take advantage of the potential of this to reach wider audiences in a more cost-effective way. We are also considering the potential of podcasting as a means of engaging with key educational audience. Social networks, and the V&A uses these as a platform for spontaneous interaction, discussion, and engagement. The Facebook has been liked by 165,000 people, and we also maintain a Twitter account that has proven to be very, very popular. We have channels on YouTube, Flickr, and all the other major social networks. Publishing and apps are a range of free and commercial apps existing already: Constable, Quilts, Cult of Beauty, the calendar, Medieval and Renaissance, and a lot more. With one of the major 100 great plays planned for launch this year, which will provide a showcase for our very rich, in terms of our collection, very, very rich theater and performance collection in a way we could not do otherwise. We have foreign language websites and social networks for China and Japan. We are talking to Google, like a lot of others, we are talking to Google about how we might be best deploy their translating technologies to enable users to access our information in a variety of languages. We continue to provide a wide variety of digital enhancements to key exhibitions, ranging from audio guides, film clips, such as Blade Runner sequences for postmodernism or Blow Up for British design, projections, guided tours, etc. The Cult of Beauty app allows users to learn about many of the greatest masterpieces of Victorian painting, along with sculpture, design, furniture, architecture, fashion, and literature. The app highlights iconic work and also highlights some of the influential women within the aesthetic period. It also extends the experience of the exhibition out on the surrounding streets and offers a tour of relevant places of interest supported by that exhibition. What's on? Available in print, online, tablets, V&A calendar, and soon on a mobile. This provides information about exhibitions, events, courses, and visitor services on the widest possible audience and wherever you are. It is linked wherever possible to booking or ticketing information, and it's a priority of this year to improve the user's experience in this service. Search the Collections, the platform currently used to browse V&A objects online, will continue to be improved in order to provide visitors with the most interactive and informative online experience, hopefully sparking their interest and inspiring them to visit the museum in person. Digitizing material also allows for the collection that have been dispersed throughout the world. often to places far from their origins, to be reunited into a singular databases and examined, explored, and enjoyed collectively. Very important. This is not only beneficial to the scholars who wish to study these objects collectively, but also to those who wish to simply enjoy them. Another instructive example is the evolving realm of digitization at the Google Art project, but I'm sure that the Prado is here very well advanced. This site allows visitors to casually browse by work, artists, and even whole collections, which the V&A has just become part of. Digital media is also improving visitors' experience in the museum. For example, Google has recently mapped out the South Kensington building and the V&A, which will provide visitors with a delivered detailed map of the building's public space with their smartphones using Google Maps. The constant development and improvement of digital technology, as well as its inherent collaborative characteristics, make digital media, digitization, such an important and dynamic area for growth in the access and consumption of culture through the arts. Digital art. Digital form can be both art, a medium to create something expressive and representative of your unique cultural milieu, as well as means of preserving and representing existing works. Much of the technology we utilize is in fact a legitimate form in and of itself. For example, take these interactive maps from the Grand Tour that were created at the Stanford University. They allow us to examine the time, destination, frequency and duration of individual trips as well as the collective group over the centuries. The design and final product in this case are both works of art in and of themselves, making this format both functional and creative and worthy of admiration. At the V&A we have a collection of computer art and are developing a strategy for curation and publishing of this work. The unprecedented access and the relative infancy of this art form has the potential of dramatically change how we interface with our own culture and those foreign to us. An interesting example of how digital media and artwork is changing the way we think about and experience art is MoMA's acquisition of the symbol in 2010. The nuances of this acquisition are more complex since this work occupies no physical space and it's used freely by all who email. The idea is that even though the symbol lacks the basic qualities of a traditional art form, it can still be captured. The symbol is interesting for two reasons. First, it demonstrates the growing importance and promulgation of technology, both in art and beyond. We are all familiar with this symbol, as it has grown into a permanent fixture in our daily online communications. Second, if we are to consider this symbol as a product, as a work of art, there is no need to travel vast distances to view it and to understand its significance. This holds true for many of the modern-day masterpieces that we now aspire to see. Many are still in a form that requires a visit to a physical space, but many can be enjoyed in a digital form. The proliferation of digital content and access inspired many to seek out the original work, to indulge in a tour, to take part in cultural tourism and the consumption of culture abroad. We are still working towards utilizing the technology that has a real impact. To date, however, at the V&A, we have over 1 million objects digitized. With roughly 25 million unique web visits to the site in 2011 and 2012, the majority of those coming from computer-based outside the UK, which is really very important in terms of traveling, the Grand Tour, and a lot more. If I may add, some of you know that I'm just started at the V&A. I'm there for 10 months now, or 11, no, 10. And there are no major changes in the V&A. It's such a great institution with a great strategy, a great concept. But at some point, it has to be a bit updated, or actually maybe even go back in the history of the future, or the future of the history, mid-19th century, when the museum was a platform for new technologies, when the purpose why it was founded brought technology and the aesthetics, style and engineering together, design and engineering. So we try to bring that back. We start with a new department of architecture, more product design, and also digital. And I think we all, from the museums world, have to think about what we will do in the future when there is only, for a lot of art production, design production, or architecture production, there's only digital storage left. If you work with an architect today and you work with his archive, it's only there in a digital format. How do you store digital formats? What does it mean for the future? What does it mean for conservation? How can you use digital formats in huge capacities? I think there's no answer yet. And we all have to work together on that question. Purpose and places. The Grand Tour emerged from the concept of travel without a practical purpose, more or less, but instead simply to indulge curiosity and broaden experience. That was the basic interest. It became a cultural expedition to the continent undertaken by the privileged offsprings of aristocracy of equal status in order to develop the mind and expand one's knowledge of the world. Although there were other motives, as mentioned earlier. To quote the historian Edward Gibbon, according to the law of custom and perhaps of reason, foreign travel completes the education of the English gentleman. And E.P. Thompson on the importance of the tour, ruling class control in the 18th century was located primarily in cultural hegemony and only secondarily in expression of economic or physical and military power. The typical 18th century sentiment was that of the studious observer traveling through foreign lands, reporting his findings on human nature for those unfortunate enough to have stayed home. Recounting one's observations to society at large to increase the welfare was considered an obligation. Still, somehow today, if we talk about the digital world. I'm in the land of the arts. Let me study them really thoroughly so that I may find peace and joy for the rest of my life, said Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. The square in front of the Palazzo, though irregular in shape, is both grand and graceful. There I set eyes on the two colossi. To grasp them is beyond the power of the eye or the mind. Palazzo del Quirinale, also Goethe. The Pantheon, so great within and without, has overwhelmed me with admiration. St. Peter's has made me realize that art, like nature, can abolish all standards of measurement. Also Goethe. And in the evening I climbed the column of Trojan, seen from the high and at the sunset the Colosseum. Oh, sorry, that's a bit too far. The Colosseum with the capital close by the Palatine behind and the city all around. It was a superb sight. If you combine this, what I said about digital before, there's a certain kind of contradiction. And I will a little bit later come to that back again, but if we talk about the empathy and the amazing impact of the original experience and the original art piece, there is no substitute. The great urban centers such as London, Paris, New York, and Madrid may very well be known for their museums and galleries, and we may better understand these places by what objects and artwork are housed within these institutions. However, the great museums are also very much influenced by the city and local within which they are situated. These institutions offer an introductory glimpse at the various forms and facets of her particular culture. They can take us towards a more in-depth or informed understanding through the exposure of objects and works of art contained at the galleries and museums. One might identify a city with these great institutions, but the social, economic, cultural of the city itself helps to define the institution and the other way around. There's a golden age of museums right now in London. It's unbelievable. And I mean, seeing that coming from Germany and having that experience now to compare, I mean, at least the museums in Dresden, Berlin, Munich with the museums in London, it's the sheer amount of visitors, the interest in public, the support also from the governments and philanthropists that made that situation so completely unusual. The V&A, the British Museum, the Tates, this is London. And London, somehow, are those museums. It's unbelievable. There are, however, some exceptions. And the city of Dresden is one of truly defined by its cultural institutions. The political history of the city has much to do with this, as its political significance began to wane along with its population. What was left was a relatively small population with a disproportionately high number of museums and galleries, which housed still housing many magnificent works of art, such as the Sistine Madonna, seen here being guarded by soldiers of the Red Army. The example why I wanted to mention it is not only my close connection to Dresden, but it's quite interesting. It's the opposite of what I said about London right now. It's a city that is dedicated to the arts, to culture, to music, to the ballet, to theater, and to the collections and the museums. But the power of that city, the political power of that city, changed in the 18th and early 19th century. So what you see there are 14 amazing collections that are somehow the raison d'être for that city. So it was a very, how to say that, a very difficult, let's put it this way, let's put it the diplomatic way, impact when those objects in Dresden went on a tour to St. Petersburg and Moscow, when the Red Army took all the pieces to Russia, at that time the Soviet Union. And I think this is a very important and a very significant picture that says a lot about this situation and the aura of one piece, and it's still one art piece, I mean, Raphael's Sistine Madonna. And it's still today, or again today, when a lot of visitors from Russia come to Dresden just to see the Sistine Madonna. If you ever have the chance to spend the Russian Christmas in Dresden, it's unbelievable what you see. I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of people from Russia just coming to Dresden to come to the gallery and see Raphael. And I remember it's maybe 2 years ago when I was waiting in the museum of someone, and you look always pretty official if you wait in your gallery, and someone, an elderly man, came just in this kind of leisure wear and said only 3 words, "Where is she?" And I made like this, and he just walked on. So, you know, it's the opposite of the Grand Tour. It's that one art piece that attracts a lot of people. Today, as well as continuing to be a point of departure, London is now one of the preeminent tourist destinations worldwide. The Great Exhibition, 1851, and that's my connection to this World Fair, marked the beginning of this development. The marvelous Crystal Palace construction as its hallmark helped establish the cultural allure of London. The creation of what came to be known as Albertopolis reaffirmed the prominence of culture in London's tourism industry that was to follow already in the mid-19th century. If I may add a few words at that moment, because I think it's extremely significant and really important, and I think we don't know enough about it. A young noble person, Prince Albert, being married to Queen Victoria, coming to London, has this education, for example, by the Humboldt brothers, Gebrüder Humboldt, came to London, and I mean, probably because he wanted to do something for this network, at that time global network of Britain, and at the same time knowing that the times will change. I mean, at the same time, Karl Marx sitting in the British Library and writing on the capital, the capital. He invented, so he knew there will be a change. He invented that great exhibition, not only him, but mostly him. And he was not satisfied with that idea to create a brick and iron structure to showcase the First World Fair, the great exhibition. He did exactly the opposite. He commissioned Paxton, the one who was very experienced in glass architecture, glass houses. What a crazy idea. And he built this huge crystal palace. He asked the military to walk through it day and night, just to test it, the structure, and it worked. And it was a great success. 1851, sorry. And out of that success, unlike to the World Fairs today, there were a lot of revenues. They made a lot of money with it. And they donated that money to a kind of foundation, by the way, still existing. We have still a board of that foundation, 150 years later, as a legacy that we all know. I mean, it's called Albertopolis. We don't use that word Albertopolis, but I'm sure you all have been to London. And if you walk down from Hyde Park to South Kensington, you see all those, like in a nerve system, you see all those parts of that legacy very well connected, coming from the arts, the culture, and the scientific and research background. It's the Royal Albert Hall for music, and there was the Royal College of the Music. There's the Royal College of Art, I mean, more important than ever. I mean, all those famous car designers, for example, today, are all educated in the Royal College. A lot of artists, a lot of architects. The Imperial College, 28,000 students just in that hub, on the forefront of research and science. And then there's the Natural History Museum that showcases the archives of nature and is doing a lot of research. The Science Museum is there to test scientific backgrounds, the scientific innovations for all-day practice for an ordinary visitor. And there's the V&A, the Victoria and Albert Museum, originally called the South Kensington Museum. And that man over there with his beard, I mean, they all have a beard, Henry Cole was commissioned to start that collection from the first scratch, out of nothing, in order to educate the population, the society, the masses, in the new century, new technology, in bringing engineering, as I said before, and style together, and combining it, as you see on this, in this painting, with the world, at least with the existing global world at that time. And it's still working, it's still there. If you come to the Olympic Games, or if you see the Olympic Games on TV, there's one, like a spine, there's one spine coming from the Serpentine Gallery, that very successful small gallery in the Hyde Park, now with a great commission to Herzog de Meuron and IYY, down that exhibition road to the South Kensington Museum, where to the left and the right, all those institutions are organized. What I want to explain with this La Grande Tour on one spot, on one quarter, is that idea of the great exhibitions, to invite people to come to those places, to showcase, to see what showcased of global culture and civilization and arts. And Albertopolis is a kind of ongoing idea and still working very well, so well that we even don't mention it today. This is that famous Crystal Palace. I'm sure you all have seen this. But the story behind it is amazing. I mean, you have to imagine nothing like this was seen before. It was just a completely new idea. This is Albertopolis. Here you see from the Hyde Park on top till down to the bottom those institutions I mentioned. And by the way, talking about Goethe, or quoting Goethe, citation, this is exactly what the Trident column, what he described in his visit in Rome. Only a few figures concerning South Kensington, only our museum. We tripled the amount of visitors in 10 years. That has a lot to do with the tourism. Something I didn't mention today, but it is also to do with this kind of cheap tourism. EasyJet helped a lot to increase visitor numbers. And we don't ask for fee. There's no entrance fee in the V&A or on all the national museums, so that also helped a lot. On top of this 2.8 million, there are 500,000 visitors in another museum of the South Kensington Museum in Bethnal Green, the Museum of Childhood, and 30 exhibitions always traveling around the globe right now, which is quite unusual for a museum that has this amount of museums this amount of exhibitions just traveling. A visit to a museum or gallery is not simply about people coming to view objects, to walk through vast hallways adorned with paintings and frescoes. A visit represents a wide array of social and economic benefits that reach well beyond the individual to the community, both domestic and international. Just as the Grand Tour was about educating and expanding horizons, not to mention very profitable for many printmakers in Italy, the cultural tourism that we see today has similar financial and social benefits. They expose people to great works from all over the world, not just the host country. They educate through outreach programs and cooperations with other institutions and organizations. They deliver the tangible benefit to the society at large, especially in the instance where access is free for all. They inspire future generations from all socio-economic backgrounds, from all ages and interests. However, digital material can only take us so far towards understanding and immersing ourselves in another culture. There is no substitute for first-hand experience and beholding the original work. This is just people queuing in front of the Natural History Museum, which has like 5 million visitors a year, and sometimes they even don't know what they do. I mean, sometimes, don't quote me, but sometimes my colleague from the Natural History Museum called me and said, "Can you help us? We need to bring some visitors to your museum. We don't know what to do." I mean, what a luxury problem, isn't it? There is no substitute for first-hand experience and beholding the original work. When we discuss the cultural aspect of tourism today, as it was for the original grand tourists, it is due to the monuments, architecture, artwork that resides there, the original work that cannot be replicated. This is why we embark on these journeys. Because of our own curiosity and fascination with what is foreign to us, and the original objects satisfy the desire more than any replication will ever be able to. Thank you for listening. Thank you.